Welcome back to week 3 of Keto Consults. This week you're going to see a holiday and how that mixes into all of the choices that Jennifer and John have in front of them. John has some major successes as he does his first 22-hour fast and watches to see how many of his symptoms got better. This week has some challenges for Jennifer, and I'd like you to pay specific attention to what happens in the last few minutes of the video. I go through why a ketogenic diet is augmented by exogenous ketones. I didn't always feel this way, but the evidence has been pretty amazing, and I show you a few ways that I use it now in my practice, in my home, and for a few of those patients that have a mountain to overcome. Check it out, and please answer some of the questions that we put throughout this video. We're trying to see where are you at in this ketogenic journey, and how useful is this? As usual, please encourage Jennifer and John. It's really brave of them to share their story so that you can learn, and I get to help them through this ketogenic journey.
Let me tell you, Dr. Annette Bosworth is here, John Garza is here, and my name is Jennifer Marie. We are going to be talking keto talk tonight. We're going to be talking fasting. We're going to be talking about lots of stuff. I want to tell you, first of all, for those who are just now joining us, Dr. Annette Bosworth has written a book called Any Way You Can. This is how I connected with her. It is an amazing book, and it has taught me so much. This is why I've invited her to come on live videos so that we can go through some coaching, and she has a wealth of knowledge that will help so many people. And we're going to go through some of the chapters. We are doing all this so that we can help you, the audience, to learn along with us. So welcome, Dr. Bosworth. Welcome, John.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you again. Back for week, is it 3 for you, Jennifer, and week 2 for you, John, right?
That's right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Well, the heck of a week to take on a ketogenic diet when you put a turkey day right in the middle.
Exactly.
We call those teachable moments at my clinic. Like, oh, there's so many places you can screw this up. We're going to have fun to see if we can get through all of them in 1 hour or however long it takes.
We were very good. We had just a little bit of alcohol, but the food was right on.
Yeah, so you're way better than me. So you cook. That's the problem. I can do ketogenic as long as I keep it like really the basics. But when you add these traditional meals in, I'm going to have you come to my house next year and say, no. She actually knows how to do all this. So you make it even better.
Awesome. Yeah.
Well, let's do the recap of the week for you, John. I know last week when we started, you had just, I think, stepped over this threshold of poking your finger and checking your blood sugars. So tell, how hard was that?
It was not hard at all. It was pretty easy. But on the Lancet thing, Jennifer's is all the way at the weakest, and mine's all the way at the strongest.
So you've got a little more calluses on your hands to get the needle to go through.
Yeah, so I gotta put it back for her so she doesn't gouge herself.
Mm-hmm. How sweet of you. Like toilet seats. You guys are going to be just fine for another 20 years of marriage. So tell me about how hard, did you do it yourself, or did you have Jennifer help you check your blood sugar?
No. I did it myself.
Okay, cool. So easy. First time through, not too bad on the wiggles as far as, oh, good Lord, I'm going to poke myself. Okay, good. I have 3 sons, and so these moments of bravery, they don't always turn up in adult males. In my house, you have to figure this out. But I'm like, oh, this is scary to even adults to poke your finger. So why don't you share some of the first few numbers on those first few days?
Well, Jen has them. I don't have them with me.
Oh, here, can you see those okay?
I can, yeah, that's great. So awesome. So you look at those, so you can totally tell he's a boy just by looking at that list of ketones. All 1.3, 1.4, 1.1. You never even had one below, and they were all first thing in the morning. Is that right?
Very first thing, but I have to get up and put a sweatshirt on and go out to the kitchen. So there's a little bit of moving. I know Jen mentioned that, try to do it very, very first thing. But yeah.
If you can do it pretty consistently, I think that's the best way to kind of keep it in your mind that you're doing the right thing. When it's got too much movement for like they go up, they go to the bath, they start the coffee. Then where you're like, okay, that's too hard to calculate. But if you get up, put on a sweatshirt, go out to the other room and check it, and that's pretty stable in your routine of checking, it just helps to take out the variables. That's all we're doing. And then, the closer it is to your cortisol rise, the easier it is for us to predict. So tell me what you think of those blood sugars.
Well, the first one was like, okay, 95, no big deal. But then, 104, then 102. Now, I don't know what happened with this 113. I don't know. I didn't, I fasted 22 hours the day before, and I didn't go off my diet. My only meal that day was, I think, avocado and we did our turkey on Wednesday. Well, we actually had 2 days of turkey because we got a Bill Miller's turkey, which was horrible. But so
I know what that is.
Yeah, we had to get a turkey the next day and do it ourselves. But yeah, other than that, I mean, and then Thursday evening, Jennifer had a couple drinks, and then the next day it was like 82. That's the best it was the whole week.
Right. So tell me about when you got the 113 and you'd fasted for 22 hours the day before.
Yeah.
Tell me the hours you fasted, like from what time to what time?
So I fasted from let's just say, I guess it was like close to 5 o'clock in the evening the day before. And then I had a busy day at work. So I went all day at work without eating, and I get off at 4. But we were planning on having Thanksgiving dinner that day. I was going for 24 hours, but Jen said, you need to eat a little something before you eat a big meal. So I had like one of those little keto Jen gets in the mail all the time. It was just a high fat packet of, some kind of gooey stuff, but it didn't taste bad.
And it tastes good? Okay.
Yeah,
that's the key. All right. So you make it 22 hours. And during that time, what kind of liquids did you drink?
Drank as much water as I could. And I had in my pocket, I had a bag of that Himalayan rock salt.
Oh, okay. So tell me about that. So is that first time you've used fasting with salts?
Yes.
Okay. So hold on, because it sounds kooky until people do it. And then they're like, I want to hear your experience.
I agree.
Salt, tell me what happened.
Yeah. The thought of eating
salt
by itself was but
here's what happened is that I packaged him a little baggie of salt, and I rolled it up and I put it in his uniform pocket and said, take this to work because you're going to need it.
Yeah.
And you looked at it like, I have married the craziest woman around. She's putting salt in my pocket.
Yeah. And that morning I was like, because here's the thing with me, I'm not hungry for breakfast, but we're trained. You hear those words, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You gotta eat breakfast, set your metabolic rate for the day. If you skip breakfast, your metabolism slows down, blah, blah, blah. So skipping breakfast is no big deal. Skipping lunch is no big deal. It's about that, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock hour we get like a lull in work, and we're going, my partner brings his lunch, and we go to a fire station to eat it, and firefighters are eating and they're cooking, and that was, I guess, the hardest part. But I took one of those rock salt and washed it down with some water, and it helped out a lot.
It's a big deal. Not only is that salt just helping to keep the dehydration from getting, when you fast, as much as we don't think about how much we drink when we eat, it's a great opportunity for us to hydrate is when we eat. But when we're choosing not to eat, you can get dehydrated pretty quickly.
Right.
So, not only does that salt also stimulate, no, we want the water to stay in, especially in the blood vessels. You'll get, in that 22-hour fast right before you took the salt, what were your symptoms that made you say, maybe I need that salt thing?
Just hunger. I didn't have any pains, it was just
no headache,
no headaches, no nothing. No, actually, I felt really good. I've had a lot of energy. I was fine. We were working a lot of traffic that day and making traffic stops on and off the bike all day, and I didn't have any fatigue at all. But
that's so big, because you can look the next day and see, okay, his ketones went up to 1.0 is that a 5 or a 6? With a good ratio in the 50s. So it just says that fuel change of, where does the sugar go down and the ketones kind of rise? And in that, the metabolism that needs to be happening within that system is your body is used to using sugar. It will do it in a heartbeat. And the energy you get from a sugar burn is that quick, fast, but then crashing, coming down. And, Thanksgiving is a great time to teach about that, where you say, what happens to us 2 hours after we have all those carbs? And you say, that afternoon football game where everybody sleeps through it, and they can blame tryptophan all they want. But the real heaviness of that sleep is the rise of that sugar, and then the insulin will rescue you and it will push that sugar back down. High sugars are dangerous. They aren't meant to be high. So your body does a quick job of insulating and pushing them into the storage cells, whether it's your liver or muscle cells or fat cells if you've got excessive amounts. But when you flip that around and you say, let me use this other fuel called a ketone, first couple days are rotten. I try not to sugarcoat it. It's the worst for falling off a wagon around Thanksgiving. If you did that, when they get back on the wagon, the hardest part is just getting past burn up that sugar that's floating around, and they feel yucky. They feel tired. They feel that lack of sustainable energy. So it's almost like the flip thing happened to you, where you say, oh, you got a really good evidence that your ketones were a nice number. And the sugar was down enough that you were having to use those ketones. Like if we were lucky enough to put up a continuous glucose monitor, like put it in your arm. If you were one of my diabetic patients that use insulin, you can check their sugars every minute of every day, and it's fun. And you can really see what stress does and what lack of sleep does and how much it affects your sugar. But when you're also checking ketones, now I don't think they have a continuous ketone monitor. So you'd still have to poke your finger for the ketones. But to say, oh, look at that sugar has been steadily going down and that ketone is rising. And you can get, especially once you get more practiced at using ketones and producing them, and I contend the best place to surge and valley that strength is a fast. I mean, a 22-hour fast is incredible. And you did really well. Like, it sounds like you really did honor that. No, don't put cream in your coffee. You can have black coffee. Don't, bone broth is wonderful if you're stuck, but try not to do that if we can get you to a good 22-hour fast. That's a great stress of, this is how your body is supposed to get through a sustainable time without food. But if you haven't used it, it's kind of wimpy the first couple of times. So if in a 22-hour fast, you were able to feel the benefits of, look at how much better my energy was, that's a win. Because a lot of times when people have been insulin resistant, or I know you've had some chronic pain issues. So I think of them as my poor sleepers. Whether the pains kept them up, or they have sleep apnea, or they've had, they're on meds that don't do such a good job of letting them sleep. They're my chronic stressors. Their cortisol's a little high if we could get really fancy and get all the tests done. And they just have way more sugar than they ever imagined. When I ask them to do this little experiment that you've done, they're like, Doc, these sugars are 120, they're 115. And the little hint there that yours got up to 113, I wouldn't be surprised if we had a, time clock and we went back about 6 months and said, there's times where your sugar's up to 130. We've asked, Jennifer and John to check their blood sugars because they're stuck. Jennifer wants to lose some more weight. And I think John has some, tell me what besides being married to this lovely cook, what motivates you to want to be doing this advanced level of the ketogenic diet?
Well, I want to reduce the amount of pressure on my knee. I want to prolong knee surgery as long as I have to. I've been told by several different orthopedic surgeons I need a knee replacement now. They just can't do it because I'm still active duty police officer, and I can't. They would have to put me on limited duty for the rest of my career, which I couldn't do right now.
Right.
So I want to do that. Number one, I sleep with a CPAP. I want not to sleep with that anymore. I want that sleep apnea to go away. In fact, last night we went to our lake place, and I did not use my CPAP. I didn't even bring it. I said, I'm just going to go. And I snored a little bit, Jen says. Right. but so did she. But anyway, that's
married. You might be married.
But usually when I don't sleep, like if I forgot my CPAP or I get acid reflux in the middle of the night when I don't use my CPAP. But that did not happen yesterday. So I don't know if that's because of the change in my diet or because things are getting better as far as my sleep apnea goes.
Okay, let's just unpack that a little. So first of all, that's a big moment. Reflux or acid reflux when you sleep, which is awful. Like I think most people don't know how bad it is, and when they get it, it becomes the commercial you hear about all the time, because if you have it, it's rotten. It tastes terrible. It wakes you up in the night. It burns. But it is a signal to your doctor that things aren't working right. That when your GI system sends the acid back up north instead of going south, it is a sign of dysfunction in the GI system. And, we can get into gut biome and, having too much food at once and too close to supper and laying down and lifting the head of the bed. Lots of little caveats. But I will tell you, nothing fixes a gut better than a 22-hour fast.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
I look forward to doing it again next week. I'm going to talk to you about that later as far as how far I can go
Well, I think, remembering what motivates you is super important. When I coach anybody through a ketogenic diet, if they say, yeah, I'd like to take off a few more pounds, but their motivation is kind of washy, it's something where I won't engage until they've got a good why.
Yeah, so I got a couple more whys.
Yes, tell me.
God, I guess it's been over almost 2 years now. I take Adderall for ADD. So I tried taking promotion tests in the past and never came close to passing. So I asked my doctor about it. He asked me some questions. I had to repeat kindergarten. It's just one of those things that I didn't have the attention. Well, I started taking this medication. It's great. As far as my concentration and I was able to pass the promotion test. I'm on the list. But it causes high blood pressure, which is another thing that I would like to talk about that day that I fasted. So I went in, which is another thing on my list I want to get rid of. I went in for my testosterone shot. They take my blood pressure every time. It's been 130/80 on average. But that day I was fasting, it was 94 over something, 70 something.
Oh, I love it when you
read the textbook. Even though I was taking the Adderall, which I didn't feel, because I usually take one when I wake up, which I did that day, and I take another one around 1 p.m. because I can't take it too late because it'll affect my sleep. So that 1 p.m. came and went, and I never took it. It was in my pocket the whole time.
Yay!
And I never thought of taking it because I felt good. Usually about around that 12:30, 1 o'clock, I start feeling the effects of not having it. So, so that was an improvement, which I would like not to have to take any kind of medication.
Right.
But as far as testosterone, and then because of the testosterone shots, my estrogen spikes. So I have to take an estrogen blocker.
Welcome to my office.
And 48 hours, so I have to take.
So let's just say all that out loud. Just make sure we did this right. So you had high blood pressure, and then you took a medication that helped your mental performance, but it increased the blood pressure, and it's something you have to take a couple times a day. And even though you got performance on that test really well, then for whatever reason, the testosterone was found to be low. So you took a medication that improves that, but it does it in such a way that causes these other side effects. So now we have to suppress this part of the hormone cycle and make sure we boost that part of the hormone cycle. Right. And welcome to the complexity of the human body.
Yes. And then one more medication they gave me.
Keep going. I want all of them to be gone. That'd be great.
Right. Well, the other one's not that big of a deal. They prescribed me, it's got to be special formulated. It's kind of expensive, but they prescribed me HCG for testicular atrophy because of the testosterone that I'm taking. I guess it causes those guys not to work anymore. So
absolutely. It's very real. I mean, that's what happens when you look at the way the human hormone cycle is supposed to surge and valley. And I write about this in the chapter called "Make HGH the Mother Nature's Way." And you look at the different places where this, you are getting your testosterone shots from a medical doctor. But if you go back in the history of this and say, well, bodybuilders have done this forever, and sure enough, it will build their muscle mass, it will improve their aggressiveness, they'll perform better with athletics, but also if they're in any kind of fight, that will be more intense. But I have never seen more breast reduction surgeries, it's real, in bodybuilders, and it's because they actually start producing milk. And those breasts are not, you take these people who are so intense about their manliness, and then you give them milk coming out their breasts, you're going, yeah, that didn't work so well. That's a tough moment.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So all these other things are to counteract it. But if you would back up that whole story and say, that hormone process, I really do think you will get off of that with a ketogenic diet. It will not be this week. It will not probably be in the next 2 or 3 months. The surge of production of ketogenic, of fat-based hormones. Testosterone comes from cholesterol, comes from a fat-based hormone in the body. And the cascade of making those hormones is not, you trickle in a little bit of, multivitamin and feel better. You actually have to be consuming and producing and nourishing the body consistently with these fat-based hormones in order to have, especially a man who's had a low testosterone, produce it normally again.
Right.
So it cannot be done without good sleep. So that sleep apnea thing is really important. But it also can't be done if they're on a low-fat diet, or they live with a ketogenic, in a ketogenic house, like the place you would live, but their sugars have been too high. Meaning they're still in a state where, as much as they're eating the right things, the chemistry didn't shift in a way that could allow for that. I think of it as the assembly line of all these fat-based hormones, and I'm talking about progesterone and estrogen and cortisol and estradiol. There's a whole gamut of them. They all started out with fat-based nourishment. And, I look at that improvement when people say, I'd like to get off these medications. We'll first take the low-hanging fruit and say, here's what's going to happen with the blood pressure. We'll talk about the ADHD one in just a minute, because it's one of my near and dear to my heart, my favorite things to talk about. But when it comes to these hormones, we're as a salesman would say, we're filling the pipeline. The pipeline goes in, and in about 2 to 3 months, we're going to be able to predict this is a sustainable, stable production of these fat-based hormones, and the removal of your testosterone is a little bit tricky, but your body will do such a better job of surging and valleying the testosterone hormone, unlike what happens when I give somebody a shot. When I give somebody a shot, I'm calculating it, I put it in their body, and it will float up and it will be high, and then it will trickle down. And if we do blood tests, we can say, oh, here's what level we hit, here's what level we hit. But that's not how testosterone works. Testosterone is a burst valley. It's supposed to pulsate. And the longer they take away the pulsation and we replace it with the man-made, injection, give this long testosterone, it'll fix the problem. It will improve that short-term, yes, their body's working a little better, but the things like testicular atrophy, gynecomastia, which is the breast thing, and really that it's a cognition performance where they'll tell you that their brain just doesn't feel right. So put that aside and just have hopes that we're going to get to talk about that in the next 2 to 3 months. Probably after the first of the year is when we'll be able to tackle some of that. But for now, I want to know what is the amount of the blood pressure medicine that you take? What's the name and the amount of it? I
don't take blood pressure medication.
Oh, so the high blood pressure is something that you're preventing.
Right.
I've always worried about with the AD.
My whole life, I've had great blood pressure. The doctor says your blood pressure is perfect. My cholesterol has been good. My good cholesterol has been really high. But ever since I started taking Adderall is when I started noticing the blood pressure issues. And
right, absolutely.
And my iWatch would tell me so it doesn't make me more, but when I was on a carb diet and taking Adderall, I would have a resting heart rate of 125.
Oof, yeah, that's hard.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
but
That's what Adderall
gone
does. Yep.
the higher heart rate since I've joined Jennifer in the keto diet, but the blood pressure's kind of been lingering around. So, and I know it's because of the medication. I probably if I stop taking the Adderall, I'm sure that'll correct itself.
Well, so when your blood pressure was that 96/60, how did you feel?
I felt good. That was the day I was fasting. I felt
good.
really, really good. I felt,
This is the most important part, is that the human body has a regulation process that it will perfuse the brain and keep you thinking and doing well, unless I'm giving you a medication to try and undo that.
Right.
And then I can try to outsmart your body. But as you shift the chemistry, like they go from a non-ketogenic diet, or even in your case where you were eating pretty keto, but the chemistry had really not been something anybody was checking. We're now trying to take this to the next level. We want to ignite the autophagy, do some of that repair of your knee, really see if we can get enough weight loss to get you off of that CPAP machine. All of those are really important. And if I'm giving you a chemistry set every morning in the name of, atenolol or, the blood pressure medicines, and then in many of my patients, it's a statin and it's another one. You say, no. If you're going to change the chemistry with the way you eat, now we need to change the chemistry with what the pills are too. They need to match your system.
Correct.
And so I have, many patients who have started on the ketogenic diet and they didn't tell me, or they tried to do it on their own, and they're still taking all the blood pressure medicines. And they're like, Doc, I thought I was going to die. I'm like, I thought you were going to die. You can't, you have to have help at transitioning one to the other. Right. But in a case like yours, where still pretty healthy, young male, having no blood pressure medicine, and even though they're monitoring your blood pressure medicine, nothing was suppressing it. So when you went on a ketogenic diet, you could put salt in and effectively treat any low blood pressure that was coming. But mostly you shouldn't have felt low blood pressure if you kind of kept ahead of that salt thing. So good job.
Gotcha. So is there a problem next week with me trying a 2-day fast?
That would be great. I want to do one more thing with the Adderall while you're doing that. So when you were fasting, did you have somebody, did you check what all of those keto numbers that you had up there were in the morning? When you were feeling good and you kind of forgot to take your Adderall in the afternoon, did you happen to check what your sugar and ketones were then?
Actually, yeah, because I was working. Me and my partner were working in traffic, and Jen called me and she said, "Hey, I'm out and about with the kids. We're really close. Let me come. Are you still fasting?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm still fasting." And she goes, "Let me come by and check your blood." So we were working this particular road with a lot of speeders. So she came by and I forgot what it was. Do you remember, hon?
Yeah, I do. And I vividly remember pulling off on the side of the road to get blood from your face while you're working traffic. So 22 hours in, he had 80, what is his glucose, and 1.6 was his ketone.
1.6 and 80. Oh, so that's, again, one of the better numbers, right?
Yep.
That was the better of all my numbers. My lowest number other than that one was 82.
Because I would contend, so what was the ratio when you take those out? What number would you be at?
80 divided by 1.6, that's 50%.
Okay, perfect. So if you could hit a ratio of 50 or about there, I would contend that that's this kind of performance level chemically that doesn't require Adderall. And I would use that as a way to say, should I take my Adderall or shouldn't I? Because it is a difficult thing to come off of. People they learn to depend on that mental performance, but it is also a drug that has tachyphylaxis, which is a fancy word that says the longer you take it, the less effective it is. So we know that if you're taking it for that improved cognitive performance, especially if you have to take a test. I have child psychiatrists now who say, I will not write Adderall for these kids until the family has been properly introduced to a ketogenic diet. The mental performance is so much better than when you remove the sugar and watch what their brains can do. And the long-term use of this Adderall as much as we can spot check and get their performance, especially for that hyperactive male. I have 3 boys in my house, so the male brain is very something I study way too much probably. But for real, they do need that. There are people out there that when they have the Adderall, it really does help them. But the longer they were on it, they got this attrition from the performance. And, they say, doc, I take it just like I'm supposed to. I'm not being manipulative of how to use the medication, but their performance from it is lesser. And then when you take it away, they get a depression, they get a slump, they get it's not fun. And so you'll get them saying, I can't be without it. I can't be without it. If you can push that ketogenic profile and then mentally make a note saying, if it's 50, I'm going to try and not take it. And that's where the autophagy and fasting and the cognitive calculations are really fun to watch how well people use that data to improve their life by taking the science lab into your life and saying, just calculate it. This is easy to figure out. And that's a pretty good number. I mean, I would have recommended about a 50 for most patients when they ask me if they haven't been checking, but to know that yours was right around there, that 40 to 60, it's a really good range.
Hey, so we have a question from Becky. She says, how many days of water fasting until autophagy kicks in? And
so, yeah, that's a good question. Autophagy, again, been a really fun thing to watch in the science literature. Again, it's a microcellular process of cleaning up debris. I talk about this when it comes to brains and the rust. It's not really rust, but it's a good thing to think, just way the imagery. The rust that happens in our brains when we don't sleep well and we have chronic inflammation. This process leads to a Parkinsonian type behavior, Alzheimer's type behavior. So the data to say what's the answer to that question, it's done in people it's done in animals that are on a carb type diet. And when they are fasted, it takes them at least 72 hours to get to autophagy. However, they think that when you're already in a ketogenic state, and this is one of those places where I don't recommend most of my patients go out and start checking their blood sugars and blood ketones when they're on a ketogenic diet. I tell them, start with urine ketone strips. Don't waste your money. Just get in the rhythm of eating keto. But when you take 2 folks like you, we've been doing keto for a couple of years, we're kind of stuck. I'm going to push you to check your numbers. And when you are chemically in ketosis, you can see those ketones are being made. You can see most of those sugars are under 100 or, pray that they're under 110. Real ratios where it's 80 or less. If they're in that range of 80 or less with their ratios, you can see autophagy is estimated that it could begin as quickly as 12 hours. And so that's why when you say, can I go for 48-hour fast this next week on week 2? The couple things that when you coach somebody about behavior changes, the 2 things that are really powerful are capture success several days in a row and don't push them to failure before their legs are stable. So it brings me back to saying, tell me when you did that 24-hour fast and you got up to that 22-hour fast, and Jennifer said, have this little meal of gooey stuff before you have the real meal. How did that go? Did you have any troubles after you started to eat 24 hours in?
Actually, I didn't feel as good after I ate. I felt I had less energy. And I assumed, well, it was a long day. We worked 10-hour shifts, so but yeah, I remember thinking after I ate, I'm like, I liked it better when I wasn't eating. I felt better, had more energy. But it was the end of the day, and I'm sure my body had to digest the food, so that might have been it.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, the hardest day of the fast is the first one. And so it's where you say, it's this tipping point to say, if you can push it to a 36-hour fast, I like people to see how that feels. And then giving yourself permission that if you feel good at 36, we could go to 48. When they have their first 24-hour fast and they get to that point where they're eating and they get the diarrhea, their body really doesn't feel good, they had a headache is why they ate. So not a story like I'm hearing from you. Then I tell them, just practice doing well at the 24-hour fast. Many times they just have to be a little better at the salt that they didn't do or did do. Sometimes they're adding fat, they're really not fasting, and so then it really kind of messes it up. It sounds like you were pretty solid on those, just really black coffee, water, salt, iced tea or tea is fine. But really sticking to that rule. And when they do that and they feel well, that gives me the signal that says, no, I think they're making pretty good ketones, and your numbers suggest that. Your sugars didn't fluctuate a lot. Like some patients I see, their sugars go up to 140, then back down to 80, then up to 140. And, their body is just trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And they're insulin resistant. They're usually very insulin resistant. So in those people, I'm like, stop pushing so hard. I know that if you could get to the second day of fasting, wait till you get to the third day of fasting. Those are fun. Because
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, the ketones are like 3.5. Sometimes my ketones are 4.0. I'm like, I get a lot of stuff done. And like my brain works so well. So I do a fast starting every Sunday. And when I start, it's always this kind of slump because the first day is the hardest. And so when you give me a report that says, doc, I did pretty well, the two things I would encourage you to do is to have on hand a good bone broth, that if you're doing well and you want to see if you can push it without hurting, it's kind of like this kind of thread the needle. Can you do this? If you've got that pretty high glucosamine, the bone broth made with chicken feet. I don't know if I've talked to you about this before. It's in the book, but that chicken feet has the supplement in it that's, you can buy it in pills, but if you get bone broth, only need 1/4 of a cup, and you want it really salty. And if you can do that, it's amazing how people say, oh, you broke your fast, you had that bone broth, but you can't believe how much of that liquid salt and that, glucose, that it's a bone broth that gels. So it sounds really kind of gross, but it really tastes good, especially if you're fasting and it's nice and warm. That kind of just becomes almost the slime layer of your gut. I mean, I don't know if you got to the part in the book where my mom, had to fast for over 30 days. We thought we'd make it to 40, and she was having 1/4 of bone broth per day. And, she was a mess. She had all kinds of things coming out the wrong orifices of her body, and not fun, and good grief. And we were like not telling anybody we were fasting. But in her bone broth, we put pepper. And so we had salted and put pepper and made it, taste as good as you could possibly make this 1/4 of liquid she was getting to live off of. What came out the other end was just specks of this pepper. And you're like, what? How could that be the only thing that comes out? But when you look at what the nourishment of that GI lining is, you're going to turn that into like the slime layer of what your gut naturally needs to protect itself. So it's incredibly healing. And I know people, I've been chirped at several times saying, oh, you broke your fast. I'm like, shush, I'm doing really good here. This is hard. And if I, screwed up and had a little cream in my coffee, or everybody gets to define their fast in a way that says, I've seen people do fast where they didn't have M&Ms for 2 days, and that was a step in the right direction, and I celebrated with them because this was a big deal. So to have a 22-hour fast where you were super successful, and I'm giving you this like hint saying, I think you'll be okay if you reach towards a 36-hour fast. Give yourself permission to have that 1/4 of a cup of bone broth if you get to a place where you don't quite feel as great, but you think you can make it, especially for the brain that has ADHD, or that kind of scrambly brain that can get off and, take care of a squirrel every 3rd second. They are my favorite people to watch what happens when their ketones get up to 2.5 or 3. Their brain works like it's supposed to. You are meant to be in this state more than we are. And when we live our whole lives with high sugars and no ketones, the people who suffer dramatically are these labels we've given to, ADHD, which is probably all of us if our sugars been up high that long.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Well, I did grow up in the age where Captain Crunch was actually considered a breakfast.
Oh yes, that was. We have birthday requests in my family, and now my boys, for their birthday, they request things like that for their birthday because they get it once a year. Like, I'm your mom. I'm in charge of that. We are not doing it. And really, honestly, the behavior is so much better. I've, not just me, but I've advised so many patients and the families about when that brain is growing and they start the day out with this high sugar cereal. I'm like, stop. If they throw a fit and won't eat a thing, fine. It's called fasting. They'll live. They got enough storage in their around their middle. We'll get there. So yeah, hang in there. I would actually encourage you to try and reach for at least a 36-hour fast.
I'll give it a shot.
And yeah, so the 36-hour fast, the timing is you want to try and sleep through 2 8-hour segments. Has anybody ever explained this to you?
Yes.
You know how this works? Okay, so yeah, you sleep and then you get up a whole day, don't eat, and then you sleep again. So really you fast for one complete day, and that gets you 36 hours if you time it just right.
Got it.
All right, I can't wait. And then you'll keep checking the blood sugars the way you have. And then if you have a moment where you get that, I feel really good, I'd love to see what your ketones and sugar are right before you break your fast. Because that should be the best churn of how well you got your system. Kind of think of it as this fire, and those ketones are that burning those logs. And once you activate them, boy, they really do carry energy the next day, better energy the next day. So I'd love to know what the numbers are right before you break that fast.
Okay.
All right. Okay. Let's go back to Jennifer.
Oh boy. Okay, let me pull up my numbers.
All right, I gotta get my glasses on to see these. Yes. Oh, look at your numbers. Okay, so why don't you just tell me about these?
Well, I'm pretty strict with my diet, like really strict. I feel like my numbers have been really good in the 70s. I've got good ketones. My ratio is great. And then on the 22nd, we had alcohol, as John mentioned. And I woke up the next morning and I thought, oh, thank God, my numbers are still good. It was okay. Because I think I really only had one drink. But then the next day, I think my body took a whole 24 hours to say, hey, lady, what are you doing? Because the 2 days after I woke up and I was up 2.3 pounds. And I'm like, oh, I'm never drinking again.
Perfect. I mean, we've all been there. Like, okay, yeah. And the hangover wasn't not a hangover. It's just that sense of look what it did to my system. Of maybe just post alcohol regret is a better way to think of it. So let me just unpack this a little bit better with you. When you had that 75. 1.8 or do the best one, which would be the 75.2, that 38% that on the 19th. Tell me how you felt during that one.
You know, I work so hard during the day that I usually feel pretty good. I usually get a lot of work done. So to me, it was just, I've been feeling pretty good.
Kind of normal. Okay, good. No.
Yeah.
And then now tell me the pattern of your 12-hour fast again. I think I remember, but especially if the audience wasn't paying attention, we're not doing 24-hour fast with you. It's something we said, let's just start with 12 hours and see where this goes. Tell me the timing and how that fits in your life.
So I usually wake up at 5:30 in the morning, and I have to have coffee in the morning. So I would much rather... Yeah, I would much rather stop eating whatever time in the day just so I can have my coffee first thing in the morning. So I stop eating between 4 and 5.
Oh, see, now if I got to design the perfect 12-hour fast, that's exactly how I would do it. That morning, breaking your fast is close to that cortisol level surge that happens to wake you up in the morning. The worst time to put calories in for somebody who wants to lose weight, it is the evening. The better time is during the light hours. So even in South Dakota, there's still light out at 4 o'clock around here. So you've got good light, where it totally does change how your brain and your body and your system work together. You can say it sounds spooky, but boy, I've had people in a weight stall and all I did was move them to a 12-hour like you're doing. And sometimes you really got to coax them. They have such habits where snacking and eating are something they've really struggled with. So
Yeah.
if you say, boy, I love my celebration of life first thing in the morning called a cup of coffee, then back it up from the 12 hours from there. And I actually wouldn't push you to do anything different based on these numbers, and look at that weight loss. Tell me about that.
Yeah, so I was totally expecting to be down a whole nother 2 pounds, and I'm rather pissed off that I'm not. But I wasn't able to weigh myself, and I'm sure the alcohol caused a little bit of inflammation. It's probably holding on to some water, and I know it's probably going to go back. But the weight loss has been good. It's been really good. It's moving, and that's the good. And it does that every time I do a very strict beef and butter fast. It always moves just like this. But now that I know I can do really strict food, intermittent fasting, and I can make it move even more, because the most I've ever lost, I think, in a week with the butter fast was 5 pounds. And that's the most I've lost in a week. But this was easy.
That's really helpful there. The other thing that you look like you got back in a rhythm pretty quickly, pretty easily. I've told folks this before, that when I first started out learning about the ketogenic diet, I didn't have any place that taking a BHB or a beta hydroxybutyrate, it wasn't on my list. But I have switched that. I have said, I have patients with chronic illness. They fall off the wagon. They don't want to go through that, get the body burning those ketones again. And they're a lot sicker they're kind of like my mom. She was very sick. And we used the BHB salts to help her back into a ketogenic state. And at the end of the book there, where she's really having to try and create the best chemistry for her body and lower the blood sugar as much as we could to help the chemo do as much as it was doing. Boy, I couldn't make the numbers look better than I did with the ketogenic diet. And there is research that says, even if you fall off and you have alcohol and you say, what's the best thing I can do the next morning to not feel, forgive yourself, let go of the guilt. We all have days. I had plenty of, if the confessions need to happen for Thanksgiving, we could be here about an hour for me and my family. But the next day is, how do you get back and feel good the fastest? And it is feed the ketones to your system, get those little logs put back into your mitochondria. And, a little BHB does help kind of lift you over that threshold. I think you had said earlier that you just had one drink of BHB after that, and the rest of it is all just you, right?
Yes. So the next morning, before I had my coffee, I downed some BHB, which is the first time I had ever taken it, and just downed it, got right to it. Yeah.
Did you have any diarrhea from it?
No.
No?
None.
It can, sometimes when it's a salt, and so sometimes it can really cause a flushing, and I've had people kind of overdose on it, but it's actually the only sweet drink that's in our house is a BHB. When my kiddos want to go for their workout, or I have a wrestler and I have a guy, so whenever they want a sports drink, I send them with a BHB, but with that, I have one kid who's a debater, and that mental sharpness is what he's after. Yeah. And of course we use coffee, but we also say a BHB is going to give them longer fuel, less of that spark on and crash kind of mental performance. And I have that question a lot. Patients say, what do you let your kids do? I'm like, they're kids. They're going to want that sweeter taste. So there's sugar substitutes in those drinks for my kids. And when people have a tough day, like they've had alcohol, they can feel this kind of slump. I'm like, boy, it really is a great biohack to just give yourself a little of that. That's the timing for something like that. And it's 2018, we have it. I mean, that's cool that it's available. So looking at what your, kind of next weekly goal is I would really say stay the same. As you shift somebody, and again, a woman, been insulin resistant in your past, had success with weight loss, and then stalled out for several months. Step one was getting you over the threshold to poke your finger. You did great. Girls are brave. Good job. I can't say that with John, but my kids, I could get away with that, right? But no, really good job of checking your numbers, watching what they are, and you have really great glucoses. Like this is way better than I was expecting. So I don't know if you follow me on Instagram, but my sugars sometimes are up at 105, 110, fasting in the morning before my workout. I'm like,
yeah, I do.
mm-hmm.
I do follow you on Instagram, and I do watch, and I post mine as well. So if you want to follow my numbers, you can go to the handle Keto Friendly Recipes, and you'll see numbers as well there. You know, yeah, I think my numbers have been pretty good. Now, I will tell you, I totally expected you to tell me after a longer fast. So today I stopped eating at 1 o'clock.
So here's the deal. You know, it's a muscle that you're flexing. And I really find that, I mean, I take care of chronic illness. So when I'm trying to help somebody with a behavior, and I don't care if they're trying to get off of sex, drugs, rock and roll, cocaine, you know, we got all kinds of problems that show up at that front door.
Yeah.
But behavior happens in steps. And it is conquering a step before you go to the next one. And then having the support around you, see what that does to the rest of the world. Like, I know you've got a teenager in your home. And although you have a husband who's really supportive of this and he's fasting too, having too many changes into a family with a teenager, it can be the sabotage. Is to say, did we make these changes in a way where she was able to conquer it? You've got a 2 pounds of weight loss and you still had a hiccup in there. That process is nice, steady. We want that. And you can say, I want it faster. I'm like, I don't. The problem with faster is it does, it usually comes with behaviors that, you know, we talk about this a lot with my addiction patients. When a behavior change shows up suddenly, it reverses suddenly too. So when they come in on January 1st and they say, I'm going from 3 packs of cigarettes a day to 0, and I'm like, for like a week. And then you're going to fail. You can't do that. I mean, the contemplation of saying, what is it going to do to your family when you go from 1 o'clock in the afternoon to not eating the next morning? And if you say, you know what, my daughter was out of town or she was at a friend's, it's not going to change anything that we would do normally. Today worked out well. I wouldn't put that expectation into your life saying you should do that. I would say, look at the success you've had. The things that I like to paint a mental picture of, and I say this more for the audience because really your numbers are good. I expect you'll lose weight in the next week if you just stick with the 12 hours and you're as strict as you are, which means you get up in the morning at that 5:30, whatever time, and you are really no calories, nothing but water since that moment the day before. I would keep practicing that. And then, so this is again for the rest of the audience. When people first go keto, we're shifting that fuel from sugar to ketones. And we talk about macros and getting to 80%, even 85% fat, sometimes 90% fat on your beef and butter. You probably get to that ratio if you were looking at macros where they almost have no carbs. And they do well. But once your body has adapted to this, there's a few things that I want you to practice on while keeping your 12-hour fast. I want you seriously listening to the sense of fullness. And so it says during the 12 hours that you do eat, you can eat all you want. I don't have restrictions for that because I think that's a crutch. I want you listening to your system and saying, okay, I'm doing my beef and butter fast for these 5 days. And this is usually the portion size I eat. But I really want you to listen to say, did I get 2/3 away through that? And I had a couple of drinks of water or whatever, goes with whatever you eat with. And I could feel the sense of full. And your identity will come and betray you. Like, I am Jennifer Marie, and this is what I eat, and this is how I've done it. I don't need anybody to tell me to do it differently. And I'm saying, listen to what those hormones are saying. Because this is what John is going to get to listen to over the next 2 or 3 months to get him off that testosterone shot, is the system will start to pulsate and talk to you. But if you're stubborn and you say, no, there were too many changes at once, and I asked them to fast 24 hours when they weren't ready, or you step too quickly, then I can't get them to listen.
That makes sense,
right?
That makes sense. And I've been doing this keto since February of 2017. I'm not quitting. I'm very patient. So I actually enjoy the 12 hours. It comes easy to me. Going a little further, I think, would be hard for me. So.
Right. And I say take the win, because, what patients don't appreciate on the first couple of, 2-3 months of keto is that chemistry shift is real. But when you start looking at weight loss in the sustained patient, the patient who's been ketogenic for a while, we're trying to stimulate that your macro for fat is coming from your fat cells, that you don't pour it down the gullet anymore. That macro was mobilized fat. Well, that requires a chemistry set too. And part of that is these hormones I'm talking about that are going to pulsate and surge if you can give them a space of empty, which is your 12-hour fast. And then when you do eat, just be mindful. Be mindful. Do I feel full? And if you do, stop.
I can do that.
Okay. Well, so do we have any questions out there that we haven't tackled?
So let me look real quick. I think you answered most of them. See, there's people who are asking about BHB. We answered that one. The lemon. You know what? There was a diabetic question earlier, and I'm trying to find it. It was somebody who's diabetic. I was on IV steroids, 1,000 milligrams, and then spindled down. Her blood sugar between 400 and 500. When should she start the keto diet? She says that her doctor told her no, and she doesn't believe that she should be on the ketogenic diet, but she doesn't have a doctor.
Yeah, so here's what I do with my diabetics. Okay, so when they've got that high of blood sugars, we have to do some biohacking. So first of all, they do need to cut the carbs. They've got way too many carbs if your sugars are that high. So even if it's not keto, boy, I would just, move to what would be outlined as a paleo, where it's like less processed food, more fresh food. Again, it's like the smoker that shows up with 3 packs a day on January 1st. If I ask this diabetic with sugars of 300 to 400, even if they're not consuming that many carbs, by taking steroids at that level and being diabetic and having those sugars in 400 to 500s, the brain is so swollen. There's a lot going on. So in my patients, where the place I begin is, I actually put them on BHB. I say, those are ketones in a can. This ketone was made in the chemistry lab in the 1950s. It's off patent. It's out there in several flavors. I really like that they add magnesium in their keto supplements. I think that's really important because they get pretty low. But when it comes to my keto patients or my diabetic patients that are really in that kind of whirlwind of how do I get out of this tornado, I just do easy step one. Any drink you drink should either be black coffee, no fat in your coffee, or adding BHB. Just add that supplement to you. And essentially what they're doing is they're putting the ketones in their body. And remember how we said you can't use ketones when all that sugar's around. Well, her sugar's 400. But if you do put ketones in there, exogenous, you kind of outsmart the body and just take them from the chemistry lab, put them in your system. Well, your body's going to burn them. So it does turn on those mitochondria to actually begin using them. So that when she does start to lower that glucose, she lowers the carbs, the glucose gets out of the 300s into, out of the 400s into the 300s, out of the 300s into the 200s. Each time she steps down, if she's able to keep those mitochondria using ketones, the transitions are less like brain foggy. Because man, if you could see her brain scan, it's hard. They're so swollen. They look like an alcoholic brain. It's just really damaged. And that's hard because she's probably out there trying to do it on her own, going to her doctor and her doctor saying, ketoacidosis. That's what my brain said the first time I heard it, was the danger of what ketones usually do. And the truth is she needs to be monitored. And in my clinic, they have to follow up pretty quickly. They have to come to group. You can't be skimping. I need you learning from everybody else besides me, and then me. And they're heavy patients as far as the tax of getting their whole whirlwind to stop doing quite so much.
Well, so good. I think that's great information. I just I'm going to do
One more thing, that you had a couple folks from your site who actually left some of the greatest book reviews. So I just want to say I am a newbie author. I do not have a publishing company behind me. Everybody who left me an Amazon review, I should send you a Christmas card because they are so valuable. So thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, I wanted to thank you, and I just cannot tell you how many messages I've gotten from people who have said, hey, Jennifer, thank you for bringing Dr. Boz on. And I'm just like, thank her because she agreed to come on and she agreed to do all this because we both together, we think very much alike, is that we want to help the community. And she says, I'll do it if you'll be vulnerable. And I'm like, I'll put my story out there if you'll help. And we're just really here to help you. And I want to thank you for the audience because I know it's a big help. So thank you so much.
Well, I will see you guys next Sunday. And again, text me with troubles. But in the meantime, keto on, and signing off as Dr. Boz.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.